Tavis, I'm from the Game Crafter. I handle a lot of the community stuff, social media stuff like this. Hello to people online through Periscope. And so I wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about our product photos. So product photos are like super important, but a lot of indie game designers don't put any stock into them, or they just take a really quick photo from up here when their game's down here. I feel like there's a lot of potential in this space. And let's be honest, the market is pretty brutal, and there's a lot of competition, a lot of things out there competing for attention. So just to start off, the reason I picked this photo to start with is when I first bought a DSLR camera, which is like that big monster. I took this photo and I thought, wow, I made this simple prototype game kind of give me the feeling like this looks legitimate, like it looks good, because I was used to taking iPhoto pictures and stuff, and. So that's why I picked it. It was the very first moment that I kind of had that aha moment, like we can totally take everything at the Game Crafter and make it look pretty and make it look, attractive and draw people in. So let's start. So first I want to paint you a picture. So a game designer starts with that idea, right? That's the magic moment when you're like, all right, I got this sweet idea. And then you move on and you invest hundreds, if not thousands, of hours into this idea, right? You have this creative process, you're solving problems, you're maybe pissing off friends that are tired of playing your crappy prototype, right? But anyways, you go through this cycle, the blood, sweat, and tears, the cliche inputs, right? And we all have probably bled because the prototype materials, paper cuts and things. So that's legit. So you've put in all this work. The culmination is a new game. You've created this. This is your game. Nobody else in the world has made this game. It is yours. And then you decide, I'm going to unveil it to the world. And you're going to take the crappiest iPhone photo, or worse, and then the whole world, congratulations, everybody thinks your game is this. That's what they think your game is, because you took a terrible photo. So don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. It's your baby. You've invested so much into it, and you have the opportunity to take all that work and effort and put it into a visual thing that tells a story. So what's the problem with poor product photos? Well, first off, there's already a ton of negative stereotypes about indie games that you've probably already heard. They're not made, they're not pushed by a developer. They haven't been developed. They haven't been play tested. The artwork is poor. I could go on and on and on. At CrafterCon, you're all aware of this, right? So that's already there. Don't perpetuate that. Don't make that situation worse. As a game designer, you can take awesome photos and you can raise the bar. You can help us raise the bar. And so this also reduces the consumer confidence in your product. So if they've never seen you and never seen your game, you don't want to give them any reason to reduce basically their confidence in that product. They don't, and go somewhere else and get something else. The perception for the buyer is that, wow, this is a terrible photo, I'm not sure about the game, and it increases their risk for buying something. And so that's not a path you want to go down. It doesn't end well for you as the game designer. And finally, this is a valid point, it's a wasted investment in good art. That good art is supposed to be that thing that anchors them, right? Like pulls them in. I got to give that thing a little bit more look because I've never heard of it, but the artwork is fantastic, right? So that's what you want. Well, a bad photo, good art, if I'm taking a picture up here and the game's down here and all I can tell is that I think there's some cards on the table, that's not doing you any good. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's the truth. People don't know you. They don't know your game, that's probably for sure. The deck is clearly stacked against you. You're competing against thousands of other games at any moment. And even on Kickstarter, where you think you might be the hot or fresh new item, you're not, because there's over 10 games a day now released on Kickstarter. 10 games. It used to be like 10 a month. So good photos are so important now, and reviews obviously are huge, and they're your best friends. So let's get started. You don't need the fancy DSLR, which we're shooting from right now. If you can get your hands on one, they're amazing because they allow you to control things in a much more, you can control a lot more of the options and things like that. But honestly, your smartphone can work, especially if you have a recent Android, iPhone. If you know how to use it, and if you use some of the suggestions I'm going to provide, that thing can totally shine for you. Now, it's going to require strategy and practice just like everything else. Nobody here has gotten good at anything without those two things. But the two probably most important things is composition and light. And light is probably the thing that most people don't know about, but we're going to get into it. So what is composition? So this is basically how you're putting an image together. It's choosing what content is in your photo. So what are you trying to get into that thing? It's kind of like rules. You could have this and this and this, but ultimately you're going to choose this stuff. And you're going to focus on that. You're going to capture it so it's pretty and it's attractive, and you're drawing people in. And then you say, okay, I'm taking this photo, and what do I want the audience to learn? What do I want the audience to get from this? Or what is the feeling that I want to give them or hook them with? And so that's it. So composition is basically coming together with that visual story, finding out what it is you want to do in that photo or in that series of photos, and then hitting them with it. Now the goal in composition, I think, for board game photos is a well-rounded collection of photos. And you're trying to represent a full view of the product. You want to simulate, if somebody came and sat down at that table right there, you would want to simulate the different viewpoints that they get when they have their hands on the game. So it might be up close with a card. It may be an overview shot from above where you can see all of the different things. There's a lot of different options. So like the game box and what's included in the game, so the components, the overview, the components maybe up close. You've seen the ones where there's like a pawn or a piece, like a die, and it's really zoomed in and it's blurred all the way around it. It's very artsy. The player perspective is really important. How does it look when somebody sits down? What are they viewing? Because that's easy to relate to if you play a lot of games. If you see something pretty that looks like what you'd like to see, then it's really nice. And finally, up close, having the cards in front of you. So I'm going to show you a couple example of photos that I like. These were just basically pulled from the Game Crafter community. In this case, I think it's a pretty cool shot. It's kind of symmetrical, but it's kind of cool how it shows all the different components. It's very easy to ingest. It just looks pretty. Good design overall. This is a game called Nuene. It's from our community as well. And this is kind of a player perspective type shot. And this was shot with an iPhone 6s Plus, and I just basically did it real quick just to kind of show you what's possible. There's more of the artsy type stuff where they're really focusing on, let's say, one game box and then they're blurring all the way around it. That's the case here. And I like a lot of this stuff, and you can throw it in intermittently, just kind of like the comedy with the rules. It can go a long ways depending on how you use it. You really don't want every shot being like this, because it can really make the viewer kind of have a tunnel vision view of your game. Like, here's a component, and here's a component, and here's a component. And they never kind of get that overview that they need to click in their head. So, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is a dice game from our community. It's called Up. I've never seen it before, but I have a pretty good idea of how you play, just based on these photos. I like how close you get to the dice here, and you really get a sense of, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, okay, it's a dice game. We're building something. And then up here, I like it because it shows you kind of that component view. It's got really good light. It's a really nice photo. And then here is just kind of the overview where everything is in focus. You don't have any blur blocking your way. Kind of gives you a good overall feel to the game. This is one of those shots I was talking about with kind of the blur. You have the depth of field and the object right in front of you. These shots are cool, and they have a place, and you just need to kind of figure out in that collection, when you're taking several photos for a particular game, how does it fit? Like, to me, this is pretty cool. I like the red colors. It's very bold. If you have it like in your shop page, it'll grab the eye. The card looks nice, good art. Here's one that I really like. It's also a game in our community. I think it's called Cave Escape or something. I can't remember. But I like it because everything is really sharp, and the colors involved are really nice. You kind of get a sense of some of the scoring mechanisms, and obviously it includes a lot of dice. But again, I like the artwork. I like the colors. I just think it's really pretty. So Roll Away is another game from the community. I don't necessarily love this shot because it's a little low on the quality end. You see some of the blurriness and kind of the pixels. I'm not sure if that was in the camera from the original shot or if that was just because it's been adjusted to fit on our website and stuff. The thing that I like about this is I feel like, and you guys maybe could back me up, I feel like this is really easy to like quickly make a determination if I like the game or not. Like I feel like the guts of the game are right there. You know, it's like, okay, cool, pretty colors, got some dice. I see a quick reference card, and I see instructions in that. Like if I wanted to really dig into this game, I would probably know it in a minute or two, right? So that kind of adds value. That makes me think like, okay, maybe a shot like that on certain games is a good idea. So. This is a game called Tower, also from the Game Crafter community. I love this game, and I love this particular shot. I've used it several times. I like that it's really bright. I like that you can see the 3D-ness to the tiles, which is kind of a difficult thing to do. A lot of times people will ask us, like on certain games, like what components are in that game. And when you have photos like this, you know it's not paper, it's chipboard. It's thick, right? And that's really cool to see. It's a higher quality component. Beyond that, I like the colors, the artwork, and I also like the really cool views of all the resources. And again, I think it's one of those ones that just really draws you in. Like, man, that's pretty. I got to give it a look. So let's talk about lighting now. This is basically the secret ingredient for great photos. And I've learned this only in the last 2 years. I'm kind of like self-taught. Because I thought the Game Crafter community and even our products, like our templates, not templates, but all of our sample products and stuff, I just really didn't think that it had any chance against all of the big box type photos and things. You got a question?
Yeah, just before we move on to lighting, you notice that in a bunch of those shots, some of the pieces are kind of only partially on. You know?
Like the stickers and stuff, or?
No, I mean like you see most of the components.
That's cropped.
But then some of them are like cropped out. Or where you can see a corner or something.
Yeah.
Is like that one, the last one.
I'll go back there.
You're
saying like this?
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that? Because to me,
I think it depends. I mean, for me, I like symmetrical stuff. I like clean, so I tend not to have the extra stuff. But if he's showing the game being played, then I don't know if it's a huge deal. It didn't turn me off to using the photo, so, but yeah, my personal style would probably be to clean it up and just make it, so that you're seeing the stuff you're intended to see.
It also hints that there's other components besides what you're seeing.
That's a good point. It does hint that there's additional stuff. Yep. Okay, so I talked about the secret ingredient, which is lighting, and it really makes such a huge difference. And the more lighting you have, the less work your camera has to do. Especially if you're using a smartphone, because a lot of smartphones aren't great in low light, but you throw a bunch of light at it and you'll be amazed what you can make. Natural light, so this is fantastic. In fact, I've got JT using it in his product photos now, and there's been a big improvement there. It's free too. How awesome is that? You don't have to buy studio lighting. You can only use it part of the day though, so you measure that up. Please do not use direct sun. It is a nightmare. If you're a wedding photographer, or if you've ever been married and you have ever talked to a photographer, they hate the sun. They love daylight, but the direct sun is miserable. You want to try to use multiple sources of light. And a lot of times what I'll do, and I'll show an example of this, is I will put light to the left and to the right. And the reason for that is I don't want to have light over here in front, because when I'm taking a downward photo of something that's a little bit reflective, like cards, I'm going to get straight glare right in my face. Because if the light is coming down, hitting the card, and it's going to come right up into my camera. So if you can position light to be at the side of what you're shooting, then you have this corridor of glare-free shooting. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but that's a really important thing. Background colors also have a big effect. You might have noticed in some of these, like this for instance, how much different it is to have the white backdrop. It really makes it pop. So certain times I will actually use a dark backdrop so that I can highlight that this is actually chipboard. Because that chipboard color, it sticks out. It's like a tan color. And against the black backdrop, if you're trying to show somebody something in just one photo, having that chipboard color stick out is an obvious, oh, that's a tile, or that's a chip, or that's a, whatever the component is. Let's see. So, and watch out for glare, shadows, and reflections. Let me give you a couple examples. These kind of photos are just terrible for me because if I see a game and I start to like it and I look at it, I'm like, man, that just looks so amateur. I've got big shadow down here. I've got a glare, and that's also from the flash. You know, it's just there's no need for that. And you're never going to see a big game have a junk photo like that, right? I mean, you're always going to see Fantasy Flight or whatever the game company is take these awesome photos. And this, come on. All you had to do was move the camera at a little different angle. I know you did because I take these shots all the time, and I'll think I'm taking the best picture in the world, and then I'll realize afterwards I'll look at it and I'll be like, you dummy, I've got a huge thing of glare right here. So, you know, for this is a great example. If I have overhead light like that, that means that I'm aligned somehow with a light source that's above or in front of me. If I turn my camera to the side or change the angle, that will go away. And then it's just like a nice shot. But, yeah. So please, don't use glare, and whatever this shadow is, I don't even know how people generated it. I had to simulate it, but I don't even know how that happens. Okay, so here is a very typical photo that I've seen. This is a game called Villages. It's awesome. It's from our community. It had a huge Kickstarter of like 130 grand, and it's a super pretty game. But do you think it looks real pretty right here? This isn't even in a dark room. It's just how it was shot. Now, all I did here was open up the blinds on a window right next to it. You can tell. I mean, let's go back. This or this. A or B. I'll be your optometrist. Which one's better, everybody? Okay, so it's this one. This is the clear winner. Now, this box is smashed up because it travels with me, and yeah, it gets crushed. But it's still a super pretty picture. The direction of light, what I did was I had the original shot. I had the box sitting on a desk in front of me, and there was a window right there with the blinds closed. I opened up the windows, let the light in, and then realized, hey, dummy, I'm going to be shooting right into the light source. What did I just tell you? Not to do that, right? Don't shoot the light source straight on. So I stepped to the side so that the game was here and the window was here. So the light came from the left. And this is what I ended up with.
I do want to point out, don't take pictures of a smashed up copy of your game.
That is a
Get the
great,
cleanest, nicest
that is a great thing.
If you have your hand in the picture,
Yeah.
make sure your fingernails are clean and well.
Oh, my fingernails are dreadful, so don't even look. I chew mine, so that was my stress management if Alex is in here. No.
So, and the shadow on the side of the box, that's fine with you?
No, I didn't care in this particular shot. Now, granted, I knew in this particular case I wasn't like shooting to go on my... I have some more examples. I can show you a 2-point lighting. In fact, my next one is 2-point. Sometimes shadows are a good thing. It gives you kind of a 3D feel to it. You know, it's almost like you're really there looking at it. What happens is when you really flood something with light, and this is true on camera too for humans, you make the image almost flat. So a lot of times you'll see when people are shooting, even on the news, they'll still have a little bit of shadow to them, but it's because they want them to be a little more 3D. You know, and not just be a flat image. So, so perfect question. So this is a 2-point lighting setup. This is on a different desk where I have, to the right, I have a big softbox light with like 3 lamps in it, and then the same setup on the left. So I'm shooting light from both sides. It eliminates pretty much all of the shadow, minus where the cards are kind of stacked up where there's a lip. But in general, and this was taken with an iPhone 6s Plus. Again, it's just my personal phone. So that just shows you it is super easy to do if you provide it with the right kind of light. Let's see, I think I covered everything there. So aperture is a technical thing in photography, and I'm not really going to get into it because you have to be a really big photography nerd to really master it, and I'm not even there yet, but I know the basics. I'm going to kind of boil it down for you. The basic is that it's how much light goes into your camera and hits your sensor. And so there's 2 different types of aperture. It's the wider, which allows more light in to the camera, and it's great because you get super sharp focus on one thing, whether it's a die or a token or a game box, and it's super sharp. But what it does is it also blurs everything else around it. and it's called depth of field, and it gives you that kind of, I'm looking right at this thing, and everything else is kind of blurred. It's just like if you look at something in real life up close, the rest of you just went blurry when I looked at my hand. So it mimics that. The narrower aperture lets in less light, and that lets the camera kind of do its job and just have a very sharp photo overall. So the entire frame is sharp. And that can be great on things where you're trying to show a large photo and everything in it. You don't want everything blurred out. So when you're taking your shot, you really need to decide, am I going for the artsy, blurry type thing with a tight focus, or am I going for a large overview photo? Here's an example of wide aperture. You'll notice that the background is very much blurred, and so what it does is it forces your attention on what's in focus, which is the game box here. On another one, and this one's slightly smaller, you'll notice that whoever took the photo, it's actually so tight that the back is blurry, and in addition, the front, the dice, the hotel, and the other dice are blurry as well. So in this case, it's a really, really tight, or I should say wide aperture, and it's only keeping in focus the thing that is exactly that it's focused on. Hopefully that makes sense. And see, this looks really good to me, and I like the reflection. That all just happened because of the light that was hitting the table that the photo was taken on. So
I'd call that top one out, though, because that's...
yeah, I was going to mention that.
Distraction in the background.
Well, my thing was, I don't like having components actually blurry.
Yeah.
I would have kept those in focus.
That and the busy background make that a bad picture, but the other two...
Yeah. I think I would agree that the kind of the pocket boxes there aren't ideal. I think I could live with it, but I don't think it's ideal. I would agree with you on that. But the thing that bugged me about that was, I don't like the fact that you're bringing focus to the game, but then you're leaving some of the components in the blur. Like, to me, each to their own. But this is a narrow aperture. This is the same game I showed you earlier with all the rocket components and things. As you can see, it's very clear and in focus almost all the way around. It's never going to be perfect, but you'll get some softness around the perimeter. But in general, I think it pops really well. The colors are cool, and it's a great example for that. Now, if you only have a smartphone, no problem. Now, with that kind of stuff, with aperture, like my camera, I can really control that much better. I can control how blurry it is and how much light I want. And on a smartphone, most of the time you have a fixed aperture lens, so you can't get in there and control that. However, there's some software things you can do, but you can also use light and distance to basically simulate that same deal. And the background will naturally blur, as I said. So if I'm looking at my hand and I get closer, you're getting more blurry. And I want to caution you not to use the blurry thing on every shot. And I already mentioned this before. I'll say it one more time. You don't want to you want to have people connect the dots. You want some super close photos. You want some far away photos. The goal is to kind of give them a chance to absorb your entire game and kind of figure out if they want it or if they're interested in playing it. When you only pick little tiny things from the game and then you blur everything else around it, you're not giving them a fair shake at the entire game. So here's an example shot of me using my smartphone, iPhone 6s, and then my point of telling you this is that it's not a great photo, but distance-wise, my hand's way out there, the cards are right there, they're not that far from the backdrop. So you don't get that much blur, even though you're telling the phone to focus on those cards. Now when I move it closer to me and the backdrop is farther away, everything starts to blur a little more. And you'll have to figure out kind of what you're comfortable with. Too much, you're going to feel awkward, like I can't even see anything behind the cards. Or not enough, and it's not going to make the cards stick out. But these shots are kind of cool because it does give you kind of the player perspective in terms of like, oh, okay, so I'm looking at these cards and I'm going to lay down one of those cards into that mix. So that is it, everybody. Go make something pretty. Got any questions for me? Yeah.
Multiple player components in the shot. Like, do you stage like most of these are staged. I see like your player perspective one.
Uh-huh.
That particular game, I'm not quite sure how it works, but it looks like there's the play area and then a draw decks for each
Yeah.
player. So
Yeah.
you can't really see the hands of the other players, but suppose that the game has other things besides like the play area, maybe like a ready area where you're maybe gathering resources, a bunch of other stuff that's going on. Should we try to stage all of them?
I think that you should show them for what they really are, because you want people to see, like a lot of times when we play enough games, we can kind of identify pretty quickly what kind of game that is. Oh, it looks like a worker placement, it looks like this, it's a tile game. So I would never stage it in a way that doesn't represent the real game. You know, you want it to be as legit as you can. And then if it's a bigger game, like let's say it's multiplayer and there's staging areas, like you say, with more components, you may just have to pull the camera back a little bit. You know, because you can always step away, depending on the camera you're using. A lot of times you can step away and you won't really lose image quality or anything if you're just pulling the camera away a little bit.
So I think about something like Parkies, that just because it's fresh in my mind because I've watched
Sure.
it. There's the tracking board and
Yep.
main and the cards and all tiles
Right.
and all that other business.
And I'd probably
How do you
do...
capture all that.
You can, and that's probably the overview shot, right? So that's kind of the high and away, the blimp view type thing. But even blimp view, I want to make sure that I can still, so that people can still read it. And that it's not just like, what the heck are all those things? And a lot of times, if there's like a staging area and you can't get everything comfortably in one shot, it's okay to have 3 or 4 shots. You just kind of, that leads to the composition thing of, all right, in this one, I'm gonna show like the entire kind of staging area. And then in this other shot, I'm going to show, you know, the park, the map that has your actual park that you're building. And you just have to kind of piecemeal it together. So
Would you find it helpful then to keep the layout of that setup consistent throughout those?
Throughout multiple photos?
Yeah. Because I don't know, like
I don't think you wouldn't have to take the same
reference.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to take the same photo at every single stop. You know, like if you do it just for one person, or you are managed to get 2 people in the same shot, that's usually enough.
Okay.
You don't have to it wouldn't be like every shot would be at every station for
Sure.
people playing.
Sure. Okay.
So
Thanks, Sam.
yeah, no problem. Is there any other questions? Yeah.
So I've tried to do like still shots of, like decks of cards.
Uh-huh.
And lighting is the issue, because, sometimes they'll come out like yellow, or
Right.
sometimes they're coming out gray. What's the best kind of light to get like a true...
It's so daylight. You can get like LED bulbs. It's like a 5,000K. If you go to like Lowe's or your local place, 5,000K light. It simulates daylight. Most LEDs now, I mean, they make them smaller, but most bright LEDs are 5,000K.
Or
And that's
going to make the cards white.
are the cards off color or are they white?
No, I want them to be white.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they are
The other
white. I want it to be, a true
The
representation.
other thing is white balancing on your camera. I'm not sure what you're shooting with, but some cameras you can say what lighting you're in and it'll adjust. Like in this room, I had to say 3,000K light because it's not very bright in here.
Okay.
So what it will do is, if I didn't do that, it would be yellow in here.
Okay.
So I tell the camera what the color temp is, and then it makes the adjustment, and I get a lot brighter white. And I can show you that later if you want on the camera.
Use daylight and try different colors and backgrounds, because the colors and background is going to affect what your
Yeah,
camera,
Right.
how your camera adjusts. And that's
All right, who's next?
what you're-
I'm out of time. If you have any other questions, you can send me a tweet at Tavis Parker or just grab me. I'll be around the entire weekend.